Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning about how the cover-up of President Biden's mental decline endangered America's national security and undermined the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution vests executive power in a single person, the president. At the founding, the president exercised the executive power through only a small group of trusted advisors and personnel. In fact, President Washington had a 4-member cabinet. Today, the president directs a Leviathan executive branch with 15 cabinet departments and at least 4 million full-time executive branch employees. The executive branch proliferation has a single source of democratic legitimacy, that by order of the U.S. Constitution's Article 2, the president is both elected by the American people and vested with the executive power, all of it. Traditionally, the president takes positive actions and authenticates those actions through his signature. His signature is required for the most significant actions he may undertake: to sign an executive order, to take any action invested in him by the Constitution, as in granting a pardon, and to take the most important action of all, to sign a bill into law. In all these cases, the president's signature is itself the protection of democratic principle. When the president signs, he communicates his assent and endorsement of the action he takes. The Autopen is a device that signs the president's signature to a document. The oversight project, of which I am a board member, has discovered that the Biden White House deployed an Autopen to affix President Biden's signature to pardons, prison commutations, executive orders, and presidential proclamations. The Oversight Project's research has found that the Biden White House first deployed the Autopen to affix President Biden's signature to a proclamation on day 5 of his administration, and that there were at least 3 different Autopen signatures in use throughout President Biden's tenure in the White House. In June 2022, the Biden White House began deploying the Autopen to sign clemency warrants and executive orders. Autopen use skyrocketed from there. We found that of the 51 clemency warrants issued during the Biden presidency, over half, 32 in total, were signed with an Autopen. And these include some of the most controversial acts of clemency of the Biden presidency, including death row commutations and the preemptive pardons of members of the Biden family, Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, and more that were issued in the final days of the Biden presidency. We reviewed President Biden's schedule in his publicly available media and were unable to find any record of President Biden's personally approving these actions, such as a statement issued by the president himself to reporters. In addition, we found that the Biden White House used the Autopen to affix President Biden's signature to clemency warrants and executive orders while the president himself was in Washington, D.C. for at least some of that day, and thus was presumably available to sign important executive actions. Finally, we found multiple days where President Biden wet-signed a bill into law, but used an Autopen to issue an executive order or for other important executive actions. The Biden White House's widespread use of an Autopen to affix President Biden's signatures to documents that exercise executive powers belonging solely to the president poses significant constitutional, legal, and practical considerations. Once the president's signature is copied and loaded into the Autopen, the machine can sign documents as the president himself would. To be blunt, by using the Autopen, anyone can sign documents as the president himself. Now, to be clear, I'm not here today to suggest that the Autopen is bad. It's just technology. I'm here today because of questions concerning President Biden's capacity and whether the Autopen was used to usurp presidential power or to conceal the president's decline. As the sitting president's mental acuity declined, potentially to the point of incapacitation, his administration's expansion of the powers of the presidency raises more questions than answers. Any investigation into this matter should focus not only on whether President Biden directed or authorized subordinate staff to take action in certain instances, but whether he had the capacity to do so at all. The 25th Amendment lays out clear procedures for what to do when the president is incapacitated. It was carefully drafted and informed by our nation's history. The Biden administration ignored it all to aggrandize executive power and push the country further in their preferred ideological direction. It is our obligation at this point to get to the bottom of these issues and to ask the important question as to whether or not the Autopen and other devices were used to cover and obscure President Biden's mental decline, undermining our national security and also the Constitution.